The last conversation my wife, Jessica, and I had before she left changed everything. She stood in our living room with a suitcase beside her, scrolling through her phone as though I wasn't even there. I asked one final time if she was really willing to walk away from everything we had built together. Without looking up, she smirked and replied, "If you don't like it, file for divorce." Those words hit harder than I expected. For a few seconds, I simply stared at her, hoping she'd laugh and admit she didn't mean it. Instead, she zipped her suitcase, picked it up, and walked toward the front door with complete confidence. She believed I'd always forgive her, just as I had forgiven countless careless words before. I didn't chase after her. I didn't argue. I simply watched the door close behind her. The silence that followed felt heavier than any fight we'd ever had. Standing alone in that quiet house, I realized something important. This wasn't just another argument that would disappear after a few days. Something inside me had finally changed. For the first time in years, I stopped asking myself how to save the marriage and started asking whether I should. Jessica and I had been married for almost 11 years. We weren't perfect, but we had once been genuinely happy. We bought our first home together, celebrated promotions, comforted each other through losses, and dreamed about growing old side by side. Somewhere along the way, however, our conversations became shorter, our patience disappeared, and our priorities slowly drifted apart. Every time I tried to discuss our relationship, Jessica insisted I worried too much. She believed every disagreement would simply disappear with time. I believed problems only grew when they were ignored. That difference slowly became a wall between us. Looking back, I realized our marriage wasn't broken by one dramatic moment. It weakened through hundreds of ordinary days when difficult conversations were postponed. The words she spoke before leaving weren't the beginning of the end. They were simply the moment I finally accepted that pretending everything was fine was hurting both of us more than facing the truth ever could. The morning after Jessica left, I woke up expecting to feel angry. Instead, I felt strangely calm. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and began writing down everything I had been carrying inside for months. Every disappointment. Every conversation that ended before it really began. Every promise that slowly faded into another excuse. By lunchtime, I had made an appointment with a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood that hope without action changes nothing. During the following days, I sorted through paperwork, organized finances, and carefully packed Jessica's belongings into boxes. I treated every item with respect because they represented years of memories, even if those memories no longer reflected the life we were living. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene, and no bitterness. Only quiet acceptance. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was making a decision instead of simply reacting to one. While Jessica was away, she occasionally posted cheerful travel photos online. Friends left encouraging comments, assuming everything in our lives was perfectly normal. They had no idea what was happening back home. I didn't respond to the posts. I didn't try to embarrass her or argue in public. Some battles don't belong on social media. Instead, I focused on preparing for the conversation waiting when she returned. The lawyer completed the paperwork, and I placed it neatly inside a blue folder on the dining table. Beside it sat a handwritten letter explaining my decision. It wasn't filled with blame. It simply explained that I could no longer build a future with someone who dismissed every serious concern as if it didn't matter. By the time the weekend ended, the house looked different. Boxes were stacked neatly near the hallway, and the quiet that once felt lonely now felt peaceful. Jessica returned home Sunday evening wearing the same confident smile she had when she left. She rolled her suitcase through the front door and called out, "I'm home!" expecting life to continue exactly where she had left it. Then she noticed the boxes. Her smile faded instantly. She looked toward the dining table and saw the blue folder waiting. "What's all this?" she asked nervously. I calmly replied, "Open it." She laughed awkwardly, convinced it was another attempt to persuade her to stay. But the moment she saw the legal papers, her expression completely changed. She looked at me in disbelief and whispered, "You're actually serious?" I nodded. Then I pointed toward the neatly packed boxes beside the hallway and quietly said, "Your bags are packed. It's time to leave." The confidence she had carried through the front door disappeared in seconds, replaced by a silence neither of us knew how to break. Jessica sat down and asked if we could talk before making such a final decision. I agreed because every relationship deserves honesty, even at the end. She admitted she never expected me to take her words seriously. She believed I would always forgive her because I always had before. I explained that forgiveness isn't meant to become permission for repeated disrespect. This isn't about one argument, I told her. It's about years of feeling unheard. She lowered her head, finally realizing that every conversation she had dismissed had quietly added to the distance between us. We spoke for hours. More honestly than we had in years. There were tears, uncomfortable truths, and long silences. But for the first time, neither of us was pretending everything was okay. Over the following weeks, we continued talking through the legal process with respect instead of anger. We reflected on the choices that had slowly brought us to this point. Jessica admitted she had taken my patience for granted, believing I would never stop fighting for the marriage. I admitted I had stayed silent too often because I feared confrontation. We both learned the same lesson. Healthy relationships don't end because people argue. They end when people stop listening. Whether two people remain together or separate, communication cannot be postponed forever. Eventually, every ignored conversation returns, demanding to be heard. Looking back now, I don't remember the paperwork as clearly as I remember the silence that filled the room after I said, "Your bags are packed. It's time to leave." That sentence wasn't spoken out of hatred. It came from months of reflection and the difficult realization that self-respect sometimes requires letting go of something you once fought desperately to save. Our marriage didn't change in a single weekend. It changed through countless small moments when understanding was replaced by avoidance. The papers on the table weren't the ending of our story. They were the result of choices made long before that day. Sometimes the hardest decision isn't walking away. Sometimes it's accepting that you've been standing alone for much longer than you realized. And once you finally accept that truth, your future begins the moment you choose to move forward.